talking about artificial intelligence and where the world is going, and with so much disparity, where we are still struggling for some women workplace rights, some basic fair treatment. And so I'll just start with a presentation that I'd prepared. I'd try and not make it too big, not too long, and try and make it as interactive as possible. So development cannot be achieved if 50% of the population is excluded from the opportunity it brings. That 50%, of course, is the women force. As early as when we got independence in India in 1947, our first prime minister was cognizant of this fact, and he said, "You can tell the condition of a nation by looking at the status of its women." Apart from the aspect of development of a nation, gender equality is a basic human right to live in dignity, a human right for women to be empowered, which requires a general gender sensitivity towards the role of women in society, at their home, at their workplace. These rights are available to us in our Constitution, to which I will go to in the next slide. But prior to that, it is the top 5 issues that India is working upon along with the G20 goals, which is the work-life balance, the gender pay gap, harassment in the workplace, which I will deal with in more detail, equal career opportunities, and impact of having children on their careers. How does India deal with this? It's a threefold endeavor that India has. One is the international commitments that India is a signatory to. The other are the constitutional guarantees that are provided to women's rights under the Constitution of India. And we have, of course, laws, that is the legislative enactments. The UDHR 1948, the ICCPR, International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, 1979. India is a signatory to all. In 1993, India ratified all these conventions and moved on to enacting these in legislation. However, there was a gap. We did not have legislation on workplace harassment rights, which was filled up. So the G20 countries, of which India is a member, focused on closing the gender pay gap and ensuring women's equal access to decent work and quality of life. The G20 New Delhi Leaders Declaration, which was held recently in 2023, focused on bridging the gender divide and also focused on bringing general women well-being. So if we go further, we'll see that the UDHR, all rights that are present under all the international conventions are guaranteed by a Constitution of India. However, there still remains a big gap in the enforcement of these rights vis-a-vis their being there on paper. So we go to where the rights are guaranteed by our Constitution, which is a basic framework that is the basis of all our laws in India. The Constitution has embedded in its preamble its fundamental rights and its policies to guarantee women right to equality under Article 14, which are fundamental, Article 19, which is our right to choose a profession, Article 21, which is our right to life, Article 16, which is an equal opportunity and equal pay. The right to life has been declared by all our courts, especially our apex court, the Supreme Court, to work with dignity, includes the right to work with dignity. There are legislative enactments that have been made which are women-specific in India to provide for equal and fair treatment of women at workplaces, which is the focus of this session. The Code on Wages Act 2019, the Maternity Benefit Act 1961, the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace, Prevention, Prohibition, and Redressal Act, 2013. And there are several other legislations like the Factories Act, Contract Labor, and various other miscellaneous acts which have been in consonance with the ILO directives, which prescribe the number of hours women can work, what kind of hazardous jobs women can do. So these are just beneficial legislation for women. The Code on Wages Act, again, as I said, derives its genesis from the Constitution of Article 14, 15, 16 of the Constitution of India, and it prohibits discrimination on the ground of gender, and it also provides for decisions as to disputes with regard to same or similar kind of work. If there is any violation by an employer, there are fines and penalties which can lead up to imprisonment. This law refers to persons of all genders. It is not just binary, it includes also the transgender, keeping in view the latest trends and the way the world is evolving. How same work or work of similar nature has been defined means work in respect of which the skill, effort, experience, and responsibility required are the same when performed under similar working conditions by employees. And the difference, if any, between the skill, effort, experience, and responsibility required for employees of any gender are not of practical importance in relation to the terms and conditions of employment. So it does not have to be identical work. It has to be similar work done by men and women, and there is no discrimination that the employer has to deal with. The Supreme Court has also defined a lot of legislation in India is done through not legislation, but a lot of binding how do I say it? A binding impact on employers and other things are done by the courts in India because they keep evolving the law. Because every time you cannot go back to Parliament and say, let's enact a law. So a lot of law gets evolved by judicial interpretation. And when the Supreme Court of India gives a judgment, it is binding on every court and every person and every citizen of India. I will move on to the Maternity Benefit Act, which is possibly an act which is recognized all over the world. India has its own, which regulates the period of employment of women preceding and subsequent to childbirth and provides women with maternity benefits. It includes biological mothers, commissioning mothers, and adoptive mothers. These are some salient features. Now we come to the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace, the Prevention, Prohibition, and Redressal Act, 2013. The genesis of this was from a case that was decided by the Supreme Court in the absence of legislation, because the legislation is 2013. However, prior to that, there were guidelines which were in conformity with CEDAW. And the objective of the act has been the sense of security at the workplace to improve women's participation in work, resulting in their economic empowerment and inclusive growth, which is the focus and agenda of G20 2030. The Act focuses not only on redressal, but also the prohibition and prevention of sexual harassment at workplace, so as to give a secure and a congenial atmosphere for women employees to thrive. Sexual harassment has been defined as one of the following acts of behavior: physical contact and advances, a demand or request for sexual favors, making sexually colored remarks, showing pornography, or any other unwelcome physical, verbal, or non-verbal conduct of sexual nature. The definition is very wide and has been given a very wide interpretation. The definition has been in two forms. There's a quid pro quo, which basically is a tit for tat kind of a preferential or a detrimental treatment of harassment, or a hostile work environment. Those are the two types of forms of sexual harassment that women in India face at their workplace. What is most significant is it is not the act of the male colleague, it is the intention. It is not the intention, but the impact that the woman feels. So many a times, somebody says, oh, it was a joke. But no, it's not a joke. It's the impact that the woman has on her personality, her growth, her safety. That is the cornerstone of this legislation. And that is what has been upheld by all the courts in India. There are various other concepts in this act, which are workplace. What is a workplace? Because a workplace is fluid. Workplace is not just the four corners of our office. The workplace is also when you're traveling to another meeting for your office work. Workplace also includes a conveyance that you may use for travel to a meeting. A workplace is a very large concept that has been interpreted by the courts in India. What is an aggrieved woman? Who is an aggrieved woman? As I said, it is not just what remark may have been made by a male colleague, but it is how the impact is on the woman. And she, a person who is working, it is not only a person who is a permanent employee or a temporary, it can be a temporary employee, it can be ad hoc, it can be for wages, it could be somebody who is just visiting your office on an honorarium. What is an employer? An employer is primarily the state or a private employer, and a private employer includes the CEO, the manager, the board of directors of a company. It also includes, in certain stages, sports has been included as part of what is employer, a stadium manager. Each employer must have an internal complaints committee that's mandated by law, and in the absence of which, there's a local complaints committee where the aggrieved woman can go and file her complaint. Another very important concept that I've seen has been confidentiality that has been discussed, whether it's for dispute resolution, arbitration. Confidentiality is, again, a very fundamental concept of this law. The confidentiality at all stages of this trial or investigation that the ICC does must be maintained. At no stage would the woman's name, the aggrieved woman's name come out, even if it were to go in appeal, apart from the internal complaints committee's recommendations. That, as I discussed, what is a workplace, what is an employer, what's the constitution of an ICC. An ICC, which is the internal complaints committee to which the aggrieved woman would take her grievances, has to be headed by a woman employee in a senior position in the organization. The process is time-bound, and it must be the investigation must be culminated within 90 days of the complaint that is made by the aggrieved woman. It is not as if the aggrieved woman, as she files a complaint, the decision is made there and then. No, a process is followed, and that process has embedded in it the principles of natural justice. The respondent, as we say, the male accused, is given a chance to counter all the allegations, provide his defense. Everything has to be in a timeline that is prescribed, following principles of natural justice. The ICC has the powers of a quasi-judicial body, and they have the authority to summon witnesses, to get the accused to appear in front of them, to hear out, but it must be cognizant of the fact that it has to follow all principles of natural justice while conducting an inquiry against the accused. The penalty, if the accused is found guilty after detailed examination, can lead up to termination, suspension, compensation. In certain cases, if the woman were to file a criminal complaint with the police, then there can be a imprisonment that can be imposed upon the accused. There is a penalty on the employer for violation of the act. It can lead to closure. There's a financial implication, and it can also lead to closure or cancellation of a business license of the employer. Going further to the challenges and appeals, in case any party, whether the accused or the aggrieved woman, is not satisfied with the recommendation made by the Internal Complaints Committee or a local complaints committee, there is a process for appeal. The process of appeal is going to a labor court, which is the first process, thereafter a high court, and thereafter a Supreme Court. And there's also a writ jurisdiction that is invoked, which is actually a jurisdiction which is not against private individuals in India. It is only against government and public authorities. But courts in India have applied the principle and entertained writ jurisdictions because they have treated the ICC as a quasi-judicial body, and hence they have admitted writs against such ICC recommendations. What is the challenge of these legislations? The reason we have all the laws in place, we have our constitution that is guaranteeing us the laws, our fundamental rights for women. However, due to gender biases, regressive society, stereotyping, these laws are not enforced by women. There's a lack of awareness, and at times there is a stigma attached to enforcing such rights. And those are the challenges of the legislation that we have seen. There's a lack of awareness as to what constitutes sexual harassment. This was enhanced further by COVID-19, to which I'll briefly go. There's a non-compliance by several small-scale employers. They just don't enforce and do not make an internal complaints committee. Deciding what constitutes workplace is an evolving concept, and it evolved further during COVID. The complainant's fear, as I said, of social stigma, career stunt, long legal process, which is a bane for the Indian judicial system. Sometimes an incompetent ICC or a biased ICC is a challenge of the legislation. Many a times before an ICC presents its recommendation, because it has its jurisdiction only confined to the employees leave, the accused leaves the organization. So that's a challenge for enforcement of this recommendation. Many a times the accused, especially if they're in a powerful position, end up filing defamation suits against the aggrieved women. And that has also been a challenge of this legislation, and women do not come forth and report harassment that they face. So this was the latest quote that was given by the Supreme Court of India in 2023. It said, however salutary this enactment may be, it will never succeed in providing dignity and respect that women deserve at the workplace unless and until there is strict adherence to the enforcement regime and a proactive approach by all the state and non-state actors, which are the employers. If the working environment continues to remain hostile, as I discussed, the twofold kinds of harassment that women face, insensitive and unresponsive to the needs of women employees, then the act, which is the POSH Act, will remain an empty formality. If the authorities, managements, employers cannot assure them a safe and secure workplace, they will fear stepping out of their homes to make a dignified living and exploit their talent and skills to the hilt. This has been the view of our judicial pronouncements. This has been the view of the constitution makers. This has been the view of our parliament and legislature. However, there still remains a gap of an actual enforcement of these rights. The challenge as a result of COVID, there was a lot of online stalking that happened during, and it continues. India has seen virtual trolling, Zoom bombing, using online networking or job-seeking platforms to connect and seek a date, seek sexual flavors. Women have to go through a lot of process of POSH Act, which is the Sexual Harassment Act, while working from home. So that was another extension of what was the workplace when COVID happened. What are the solutions that we look for this legislation and its enforcement? We focus on prevention, prohibition, and not just redressal. How do we get this focus on prevention, prohibition? It's by making people more aware, both the employers and the employees, by conducting various seminars and workshops for private players, as well as the government doing its bit of spreading awareness about the harassment issues for women. Unpacking the bias and promoting a work culture which is free of stigma. We have to make gender sensitivity to the issue that it is not the woman's fault when she faces harassment. There is a problem that exists in the society and the workplace. So we need a robust mechanism for the women to come forward and make a complaint. If an organization has a large number of complaints, it does not mean that that organization has a problem. It possibly means that organization has a robust mechanism for redressal. The women are more aware there. And we need to combat stereotypes, and you need to make a provision to make it gender neutral to include transgender, which it does not at the moment take into account. This is something that I share with, which was distributed by the Supreme Court of India, a handbook on combating gender stereotypes. At least the professionals who work in India, the lawyers, must go through this, because it is not just confined to any organization. It is across the board, all professions, including the legal profession. Does anybody have any questions? No? Okay. Thank you so much.